to still contribute to and improve and build this nation, right? And the truth is, African Americans didn't have to say that. It's actually a stunning fact and feat to think that especially during the Civil Rights Movement, that the African American take on America was that this nation isn't a lie, it's a broken promise, and they gave their bodies and their blood to fix it. And in coming to that realization for me, again, largely in the years after college, I basically thought to myself, hey look, it was terrible being called a Slurpee maker and a dothead in 7th grade at Cornell. It wasn't being thrown in Birmingham jail, right? And it wasn't being beat on the head on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And if John Lewis and Medgar Evers and Fannie Lou Hamer and Septima Clark could say, as Langston Hughes said, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be, then I, who comes from an immigrant family, who benefits from the Civil Rights Movement because we come as a result of the Immigration Act of 1965, which is spiritually connected to the Voting Rights and Civil Rights Act of 64 and 65, what am I doing? Accentuating only an oppositional identity. Why aren't I asking the question, who am I and how do I contribute to my nation? So I would say, I think we get pushback. We get all kinds of pushback. One dimension of pushback is from, I would say, kind of an identity politics progressivism that says to me as a Muslim, you need to accentuate your Muslimness more, or me as an Indian American need to accentuate your Indianness more, and do it in a way that is oppositional to or antagonistic with your American identity. And there's other folks on the other side who would say, why does this Muslim thing matter at all? Just name your kids Dave and John. Have them go to the Episcopalian Church on Sundays if you need a religious life. Read Mark Twain and John Steinbeck and get on with it, right? And I would say we're trying to advance what I think is the best of American political thought, which is we're a nation of many in one. And in this world right now, in which countries across the world, Afghanistan, Iraq, Myanmar, are all trying to figure that out, and are in the midst of bloody civil wars in that process, it is useful and precious to remember the American achievement in that and to improve upon
it. I'm challenged by what you say because I think there's an institutional mindset at this university that's very self-conscious of it being a state university. And the whole tradition of separation of church and state makes it easy to have an intercultural platform, not as easy historically to have an interfaith platform. So I guess I'd be interested in your comments around that dynamic.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Willard. By the way, an awful lot of leadership programs I was involved in when I was a student here were under the aegis of Willard Broom. So I'm grateful to you for that, and I'm grateful to you for being here today. So public land-grant universities, both as a result, I think, of the Morrill Land Grant Act in the mid-late 19th century, 1865 or thereabouts, if my memory serves me correctly, and as a result of a number of documents which have come out since then. The Truman Commission on Higher Education, over and over again, the democratic nature of a public university is affirmed, meaning that it's a laboratory for democracy and it's a strengthener of democracy, right? And I don't know if there's a more important dynamic in America today than the fact that we are the world's most religiously diverse nation in human history, the most religiously devout nation in the West at a time of global religious conflict. And that plays out in our public and political life, not to mention our semi-private and semi-public lives, meeting in college dorm rooms all the time. Right? And basically, if responsible institutions like public universities do not engage that issue, you simply forfeit it to other people. It's just that simple. And in my view, that is being remiss in the democratic mission of a public university. let me get to the church-state issue here briefly, which is that the Supreme Court has affirmed over and over again that teaching about religion is not only perfectly legal, but important and necessary in public educational environments. And of course, universities are not, their educational programs are not regulated in nearly the same kind of way as grade schools and high schools, as it should be. The academic freedom is a core value of a university in a way that it's not in the same way in a grade school or a high school. So you are perfectly within your legal means to do this. Now, does that mean the university can appoint, can pay chaplains who do pastoral care and proselytize? I'm not sure. But does it mean that a university can involve in freshman orientation and RA training and in the core curriculum appreciative knowledge of different religious communities, and understanding of the intellectual heritage of the great religious traditions around the world that are all located in America and, dare I say, on this campus? I think that is 100% correct. I'll tell you a quick story to kind of accentuate this. So I was actually at Florida State University 5 years ago, speaking to their higher education students, so students who are going to go on to be one day Willard Broom, right? Senior people in student affairs departments. And I'm talking about the importance of them having fluency in religious diversity and engagement in interfaith cooperation and leadership. And one of these students raised his hand and it's like, we don't talk about religion here. And I lost it. I mean, usually, like, my job is to play the Muslim Mr. Rogers. I'm like, calm, make people feel comfortable, But I lost it, because I'm in, like, Tallahassee, Florida, and I can't get religion off the radio dial in my rental car or off the TV in my hotel room. And none of it is particularly pretty religion. None of it is appreciative. None of it is oppositional. It is antagonistic. It is anti many things. And I'm literally thinking to myself, you here at Florida State University are saying you don't want to talk about religion, right, in this higher ed class, but all around you, other people are talking about religion. That just means you're just not part of the conversation. John.
Eboo, I believe in everything you're doing and everything you've said here today, but I want to do a little pushback.
All right.
Around 2 words that you've used and put them in a larger context that I think you might agree with. One is identity and one is appreciation. In the 60s, some of us, black and white and other, were working to try to integrate and improve the experience of black people in particular in higher education. And there were publications and conferences held around the theme that basically boiled down to this: identity and participation. Because for people to fully participate and equally participate, they need to have a strong sense of their own identity, not in some of the negative ways you said. But at that point, and I think probably forever, we're always working on our own identity as well as trying to learn about the other. In fact, it's inductive, it's interactive. So I would like to argue for both identity and participation from that experience of the 60s. And on appreciation, and then I'll shut up. Here in the early 90s, I think just before you came, Dan Perino, who you may have known, but who was a beloved figure for many years up until quite recently, had a former dean of students in other positions, led a study process in the early 90s about all this multicultural diversity that you're talking about. And we came up in that committee with a formula that I have continued to use, and I think that everything you're doing probably reflects. But it's a 3-part piece. Not just appreciation, which I'm sure is very central, but we came up with the words awareness, appreciation, and respect. That if you go through those stages and you engage in those dynamics, then you will reach perhaps some of what you're after here. And I think it's probably what you do in your work. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Jeff. So I think what we're defining terms here, which I think is very useful. So what I was pushing back against, if you will, was identity politics, which I define as the development of hyper-antagonistic and oppositional identities, which basically ask the question, who am I and how have you oppressed me? And again, having been through that period, it did something for me developmentally, no doubt, right?